by Mike Butcher, editor-at-large for TechCrunch. Mike, this is your third IMNAT, and you've seen like the ideathons, the startup demos, you mingled with the crowd. How do you think you compare to the West? Are we catching up? Are we there yet? Or do you think we should compare? Do you think it's a good start? Do you think it makes sense for us to compare?
I think it's fair, because I think if you look across the world, most of the time the kinds of conferences and the kinds of events that startups appear at usually follow a similar kind of format, and I think the ArabNet took that format, adapted it for the Middle East, from the MENA region, and has done extremely well with it. You've got startup pitches, you've got VCs on stage, you've got conversations and panels and fireside chats about businesses scaling in the region, technology companies, and so I think it's got totally the right ingredients. So I wouldn't worry at all.
Right. So and basically the same thing, but I want to talk about the quality of the ideas, the quality of the businesses, and maybe the investment landscape. Are we getting there? Are we catching up to the Western world?
I think you can't really compare. It's different, and also, but what you've got really in the MENA region is a very, very interesting and significant emerging market of diverse countries. It's a little bit like talking about Europe. Europe is not one place; it's a lot of different places, and it's similarly across the MENA region. You've got different countries. Having said that, there's a lot of high growth going on in many of these economies. There's because of obviously very interesting things like the Arab Spring. You've got new opportunities opening up, new markets opening up, and you can do quite a lot without a huge amount of resources here. Having said that, probably there are a lot of businesses which are scaling up here in this region, which require quite capital intensive. For instance, the sort of online food ordering startup, which we've seen so much of in the US and the UK, like Just Eat, for instance. That business model is being replicated here and adapted for the MENA region, and some very large rounds are being raised in order to be able to execute that. So it's, but it does depend on what you do. And I think product-wise, it's very interesting. There's plenty of really, sort of new, fast-moving small startups coming up with interesting products as well. So it's cool.
So you basically touched on a couple of things I want to ask you, so I'm going to go through them. So basically, do you think there are certain areas which basically sort of exceed what's relevant West? So basically, is there like any points of strength that we have? So maybe concerning maybe economies of scale, maybe cheap labor, cheap talent.
Yes, I mean, in Europe we talk about Berlin as being cheap to start up in. Well, it's pretty cheap to start up in quite a lot of Middle East countries. Probably a heck of a lot cheaper. And there's also great engineering talent. I was just in Cairo, for instance, where there's some amazing engineering talent. And Lebanon and Beirut is very famous for its creative and user interface and design talent as well. So there's plenty of talent around. What is the issue, obviously, with startups often is funding. And there is still an issue about early stage funding, being able to bring some early stage money, angel investing, and seed stage venture capital and institutional investing to the region. So that's still a little bit early, I would say, but there's plenty to play for, and it's very interesting to see new funds appearing on the horizon, and new funds appearing, practically every month now, I think. So it's very interesting, yeah.
And so basically, I want to say something else. A lot of the talk that we hear here, a lot of the criticism that we get, is that most companies, most startups, is ideas that already exist somewhere else, and they get adapted and localized. But have you seen like any startup that actually was new to you, and you actually think that this might grow to be a global company?
Well, yeah, I think in the Ideathon we saw some companies there doing some quite original things. I think Pushbots was one that stood out for me as being a company that you could quite easily come across in Silicon Valley, coming up with a new innovative business model, something that developers and engineers need, startups need. So plenty of opportunities, for new and original ideas to come from here as well. I think nobody's going to blame or accuse anyone from looking at a business model that already exists out there and thinking, let's just do this in the Middle East, because my goodness me, there's a heck of a lot of money to be made from some of these business models. I was just mentioning the food delivery market earlier. There's e-commerce, of course, enormous amounts of e-commerce, gaming as well. is gradually taking off as well. And online content as well, because there's so little Arabic online content that's. I mean, this is just low-hanging fruit that you would obviously naturally do if you were an entrepreneur. So there's no shame in that. But at the same time, of course, you've still got some innovative startups coming through. It's just, as I said, it's just a matter of whether or not they can scale out from here, or whether they can, they'll move elsewhere in the world.
Okay, so let's say for a company like Pushball, when do you think is a good time to go global? And what are some of like the do's and don'ts? The
best time to go global is day one, basically. I mean, of course, you can look at a model and you can go, let's test this out in a particular market and see what user feedback we can get first. And in a way, if you tested that out in, say, an Arabic-speaking market, a particular business model, and just got some early feedback, and then you could launch globally and maybe in English afterwards, that would maybe a good idea. But I think generally speaking, especially with technology companies, the best time to go global is day one.
What do you think is the strongest sector for maybe the coming 3 years in the region?
The strongest sector in the region is going to be obviously e-commerce. I think entertainment and gaming is going to be big. And then I think mobile, I mean, just any kind of mobile plays are going to be big because smartphones are taking off at such a clip that particular kinds of mobile plays are going to be, pretty big, I think.
So it's still bad on gaming. I don't know if you heard that. There was I think maybe 5 companies that recently closed in Riyadh.
Yeah.
So maybe 2 years ago, all you heard about was e-commerce, fashion commerce and gaming. But gaming has been kind of, subdued.
Well, I think we were probably in a phase where we're in a trough of companies not getting it right, and then somebody's going to come out and get it right. I think the other thing is there's going to be a big play for the payment space as well. I think that online payments is once certain regulatory things go through, that's going to be a big space as well.
And this is my last question. A friend of mine asked me to ask you. He says, how do you get on TechCrunch?
How do you get on TechCrunch? I get asked this all the time. Keep it simple. Put all the information into the email pitch. Try and compare. Mention who you're competing with. Mention how much money you're raising or have raised. And just tick all the boxes about what's the market problem you're trying to solve, how you're solving it, and who you are. Just keep it simple, and then go from there. Don't send long-winded emails.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
My pleasure. Thank you.